So our project is called, or our little business is called Trees for Change. And what we're really about is giving young people hope, particularly hope and the confidence to go and tackle large environmental problems. The other thing we want to do is to try and create the next generation of Landcarers by doing these sorts of things with schools. So let me take you through a couple of the projects that we've been involved with, and you'll get some sense of how this works. So this is down at Myalup, and that first photograph was taken at Myalup too. So we're planting a dune, which is overlooking the ocean. These are a group of Year 6s from Harrisdale Primary School, which had come down from Perth for the day. They were one of 4 schools that came along. There were about 200 students involved, and we planted 12,500 seedlings over a period of 4 days on that dune. And we did that in conjunction with the Shire of Harvey, so they were our partner in this. But we also did it in conjunction with the Myalup Community Association. And that's Marty there, who was one of 4 people who was very much involved in helping me get the program running. The seedlings are on the tennis court there because the kangaroos came in on the grass at night outside, and we thought we'd like to keep the seedlings and plant them rather than feed them to the roos. So they were a fabulous group of people to work with. It couldn't have been a nicer place to go, and they were lovely with the kids when we had the kids down there too. Now that's what the site looked like. This is taken from a drone. And one of the things that I want to try and introduce into the work that I do is something that relates to the schools, that the teachers can take back to the schools and have talking points later. So you might have heard of this term STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. And I've recently heard it's STEAM because the A becomes arts. And I'm waiting for it to have an extra E in there for English. And that'll be just about the whole curriculum, won't it, Andy? In the one acronym. But what we've done there is, because it's such an exposed area, we've put guards on some seedlings, and we want to see if the guards actually make any difference to the survival rate. And there we are looking along the edge of it. The guards that are closest to you are cardboard. Then there's a gap, which is the Nil plot, and then there's some Coreflute guards, and we had some other plastic cylindrical guards further over, but you can't see them. So, of course, what's sitting behind this is these seedlings cost us 55 cents each to put on that site. Now, is it worth spending the extra money to put guards around them? How can we decide that? Because if there is no difference in survival rate between putting guards on and the Nil plots, then why would we use guards? The other thing is, what are the costs of the guards? Will these cardboard ones at 50 cents each do the same job as a Coreflute at $1.45? We don't know. But what I'm trying to get at here is to get the kids to think about these things, to have them as part of the project, putting it in, and to bring them back, and they will count them and see what's there. This is another project which is similar. This is Anketell North, which is a DBCA block down in the suburb of Wandi, and it's some pretty degraded looking Banksia woodland looking in that direction. If we look in the opposite direction, it looks like this. And I thought, gee, you know, if I was out in the wheat belt, I'd get a tractor out with a ripper and rip that. Do I really need to do that there? Well, I was reminded of this site at Woodman Point, and you can see on the left and the right, the seedlings are doing really well. Through the middle, that looks like an old track to me. So with that little bit of information in the background, out came the tractor. Not quite as big as many of the ones you see in the wheat belt, but it did the job. We did a ripping section there, and then we planted it. So the things I wanted the kids to do there were to plant a section where it was ripped only, where there was no treatment, and we decided to use some wetter soil on that. So we've got, if I run through it, we've got nil, wetter soil only, ripping only, and then a combination of ripping and wetter soil. And I want to bring the kids back and do the plant counts to see if that makes any difference. In that situation, it cost us $1,000 to rip a hectare. Sounds rather a lot, but in the context of planting 10,000 seedlings per hectare, which seems fairly typical on the Swan Coastal Plain, it's 10 cents a seedling. So it's actually not a big investment per seedling. You can see a fence in the background there that goes around that hectare. That cost $4,000 to put up. So to protect the seedlings in this case, it was 40 cents a seedling to put a fence around there. And if you add the cost of the ripping, 50 cents a seedling. To establish seedlings in that area. And probably the other thing that's really worth saying here is the ground was so hard that kids of that size were having trouble pushing the tree planters into the ground where it wasn't ripped. So in my mind, I would rip it anyway because I know the kids will do a good job of planting. If it's too hard, you'll get the seedlings popped up out of the ground. Now, here was another one, and I brought my props in here. So the question is, should we be paying $1.50 for a seedling grown in one of those, or 50 cents for a seedling grown in one of these? Now, these are 85cc cell trays, so it's not the normal 50cc one, and the only person I know who has these is Keith Parnell out at Tincurran. And yes, this is an ad for Keith's nursery. He grows fabulous seedlings. But there is a real point here. Why are we buying forestry tubes at $1.50 if we can get the same sort of seedlings for 50 cents? This is a group of kids from John Curtin College of the Arts planting that particular site up, and I'll just go another step forward. And that's what it looked like when they finished. And this particular row here, number 11, if I can, how do I get them? The row closest. Aha, there we go. So that one, that's Banksia attenuata out of a cell tray, and this row 9 here is Banksia attenuata out of the forestry tubes. And that's how it's the project has been put together there. What we've done is grafted that trial on top of City of Coburn's normal planting technique, which is to scalp the soil. They get in there with a bobcat and take 100 mil off the top, and then they drill holes, and you saw the auger earlier, and then they plant. They don't normally do it in that kind of regular pattern, but that was just to make the sites, the plots, easy to plant, easy to count. But that's what their typical planting of 20,000 seedlings a hectare looks like. And coming from the wheat belt, I thought, gee, that's a lot of seedlings. But anyway, that's how they do it. So what we've tried to do is use their standard practice and put the trial on top of that. So these are the discussion points for the kids. Are the guards necessary? And if so, what type of guards? Does ripping improve the survival rate of seedlings and their health? And why are we buying expensive plants if we can buy a lot cheaper ones? What I'm trying to do in the back of my mind is to develop some management techniques for these different sites, so I understand what the best system is here, but to include the kids in that journey so that they can make some of the conclusions as we go along. Now, let's move on to engaging youth. When I was thinking about this, I thought what we really need to do is to go somewhere interesting and do something interesting. Now, this isn't a group of school kids, this is my family and friends, because when I went through my photographs, I couldn't find any that I had photo permission for, which were school kids. So you're going to have to imagine they're all school kids. This is a couple of years ago. So it's my two daughters who are closest to us, and they were probably 16 and 17 at the time, so we'll imagine that that's near enough. So we were putting out a trap line down at Dryandra, and there's John. He's just finished putting the trap line out there, the cage trap. Kids love doing this. The sorts of things that they are catching the traps are woylies or possums, and they think it's a fantastic exercise. Put them out in the morning and then, put them out in the evening and come back the next morning and have a look and see what's there. Now, this next one is Barna, the animal sanctuary there. Now, when I survey the kids as to what they enjoy down there at Narrogin, that's always number one. Whatever else we've been doing, going to Barna and seeing the endangered marsupials like the Bilby is just the thing that they love the best. So it's really important to include those kinds of activities with them. The other thing I love doing is meeting the lambs. So if we go to a farm, I try and encourage the farmer to have some ewes and lambs available. And you can see they're loving all that. This is Brett Beecham, who's DBCA Ecologist down at Dryandra, talking to the kids about adaptions. So he's got a skull there which is adapted to living in that climate. That's another thing that the schools can do, is to do some work with DBCA in Narrogin, and they do a fabulous job. It's a great experience for the kids to actually get out there and talk to the scientists who are doing the work. This is another thing I've done. This was at UWA's farm. We took some electrical conductivity meters with us. These were Year 9 kids. They'd been learning about salinity. So he said, OK, let's go and find how much salt is actually in this creek. And as it happened, that particular creek there was almost fresh. A kilometre downstream where it went into the neighbour's place, it was 20% as salty as seawater. So the kids could actually walk down the creek and see the salt increasing. So it was real to them. And the other thing which I think is really important that we do on all of our excursions is we give the kids the opportunity to spend an hour in the bush with a Nyoongar elder. That's Greg Nanup, and he's down on the banks of Logbrook Dam talking to the kids about a grass tree. That photograph was taken last year, but we try and include that in all the grant applications that we write, that the kids actually spend some time learning about Aboriginal history and culture as well as Western history and culture. But this is really all about tree planting. So this is Cloverbrook Farm, which is about 15 kilometres south of Wandering. And we had a group of boys, there's a Year 8 boys from Linwood Senior High School last year, and they're planting along the rip lines. That was a 10 hectare site, 20,000 seedlings went in there. And they're planting the ratio of 2 shrubs to 1 tree. So we have one of the boys carrying trees and the other 2 are carrying shrubs, and we get them to leapfrog each other down the row in order to get the rows planted and to get the ratio of seedlings right. These are the girls. One of them didn't enjoy it quite so much, but the 2 on this side thought it was fabulous. The one in the middle enjoyed it so much that she didn't even bother to bring her gumboots. So she's just wearing her shoes, and I heard later that her mum was not impressed when she got home. The kids seemed to get into this. They didn't mind planting in the rain. It was only light rain, but they loved the experience. A key thing to getting these large numbers of seedlings done with a group of kids in a short time is to have a good supply chain. And that's Jeff, the farm manager, you can see there. And he and his workmen had 2 of these little John Deere gators, and you might be able to see just behind the gator on the right there's the ute. He was shuffling backwards and forwards to keep the seedlings up to the kids. So he'd come up to a group like this, what do you got, trees or shrubs? All right, you want some trees. Then he'd put a couple of handfuls in their bucket, and that would just keep them going. If you let the kids stop, everything stops happening. You keep them moving, and you can get quite a lot done in a short period. These guys were there for about a day and a half. There were 28 of them, and they planted 13,200 seedlings in that time. And that was a fabulous effort for a group of 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, Year 8s. And we put them on the bus at 2:30, and the teacher told me that by 3 o'clock they were all asleep. This is a little bit more recent. This is Andy down at Woodman Point with Forest Crescent Primary School. This is another DBCA project, and we're planting there with a lot of support from DBCA. This is back in May, so they were actually watering the seedlings in after the kids had left. This is an aerial view from a drone, and you can see all the guards there. That's looking east. Look west, and it looks like that. It goes about halfway up the frame, and next year we'll go and plant a portion of the rest of that. It's probably another 2 or 3 years there. There's about 7 hectares of dune that we can revegetate down there. And the folk from DBCA say to me, look, if you weren't doing this, it wouldn't happen. And that's how important these grants and this activity is, because DBCA simply don't have the money to fund that. We've got to fund it externally. Now, how did we start on all this? Well, this is Ardross Primary School, where Andy was the principal and my kids are at school back in 2008. And we looked at that front lawn and we thought, gee, that doesn't look too fantastic. Maybe we could do something to make this more interesting and more sustainable. So we calculated that if we stopped watering it like it was the oval and started watering it like it was a piece of bush, we could save 2 million litres of bore water a year. So that's what it looked like last week. That's been the transformation. We've got rid of all the lawn. That's the established native garden that's there. This is 2013, in about the middle of the year, and keep an eye on that tree there, because I'm going to show you a couple more photographs. That's what it looked like 15 months later, and that's what it looks like today. So we have really transformed that, and we've given the kids there a fabulous experience in understanding what you can do to transform the bush and what you can do as a group of people if you want to. And there we are, kids, our most important natural resource. This is back in May, and it's doing a mass planting of kangaroo paws in a little corner of the garden. Now, I haven't got much time left. Andy, perhaps you can come and tell me how this makes sense from the point of view of fitting it into a school curriculum. Why is it good for a school?
Got 30 seconds left? Look, Bruce and I have worked together since 2006, basically, when I went to Ardross. And for a 10-year period, it just started as exactly right. We had a small water-wise garden out the front. We had 2,000 square metres of lawn that wasn't doing anything, and we had to get some new buildings put in. So I got rid of one of the little water-wise gardens, and we went from about having a 50 square metre garden to 2,000 square metres. And what it's actually created, it's created an environment in an urban area. So if anyone's got nothing to do and want to drive by Ardross Primary School next to Applecross Senior High School, you actually don't even recognise there's a primary school behind it. So the kids then go from that to, we've got bird boxes in the trees, so we get the pardalotes, the pink grey galahs, but certainly with Piney Lakes nearby, we've got the red-tailed cockatoo that visits really often, just don't nest there, but we've got the big nesting boxes there for them, to micro bat boxes and things like that. When Bruce says about sustainability, that was really the focus, and I did see someone from Carbon Neutral here. I was always at Bruce to say, we've got 450 kids at school, we've got 60 teachers, all these parents. How much along the line of carbon neutral are we? So in that 2009-2010 period, we went from having those gardens to completely water-wise garden at the front. We replaced all our toilets with half and dual flush toilets, waterless urinals and push-button taps, and we actually saved in 2008 to 9, 72% of our water. So that was in 1 year, and that's what they now do. So it's just really a way of life. It's a high socio-economic area, so the pressure is really on every year for literacy and numeracy. But from kindergarten through to year 6 as our kids live, breathe the environment. I've now left there and gone to Forest Crescent. I'm slowly getting them involved in some of these activities. So we went to Woodman Point. I had some teachers, they were year 4 kids, and I'm just year 4 kids. The teachers were a bit reticent to take kids on an excursion these days is fairly labour intensive and a fair bit of liability paperwork. So I actually did the paperwork and I booked the buses and I got the parents. I had 10 parents go. And the kids and the parents said this is the best excursion we've done. There was an excursion with a purpose and a learning and about the environment. So the same group of kids on Monday and Tuesday week next week, we're travelling down to Pumphrey's Bridge in Wandering to a lady called Judith Price's farm, and we've gone from doing a sand dune revegetation to a farming vegetation. And some of my kids I know at Forest Crescent have never been past Armidale, and so they're going to see farms for the first time. So to see them when they see you, like Bruce showed, the sheep, we don't tell them it's their next meal, but certainly to see sheep and lambs and cows and things, some of these kids have never seen it. So as Bruce said, the community get involved in it. I've got parents at Ardross so I've left now. There's a new principal who's sort of sitting on the fence. She had a forum with her parents not long ago to say, look, what are the things that are important at Ardross Primary School? It wasn't about their reading and writing and arithmetic, it was about their sustainability, environmental issues. So no, it was a bit of a win-win there. So that's really me, Bruce. I don't know if you want me to add anything else. I got heaps of notes, but we're running out of time.
Yeah. How are we going, John?
That's it.
Yep.
That's it? Fine.
So I guess
Okay.
if there's any questions, just